All right, so today we're diving into something pretty crucial. What can actually be done to boost Europe's competitiveness in the coming years?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And we've got this, well, pretty hefty report. It lays out a whole new industrial strategy for Europe, tackling everything from, innovation gaps, those energy challenges that everyone's talking about, and even global dependencies.
And it's interesting, actually, because the report, it doesn't shy away from really highlighting some of Europe's, well, shortcomings. It paints a kind of stark picture of what we're up against. Slowing productivity growth, workforce that's actually shrinking, and of course, you can't forget the geopolitical instability that's always kind of looming out there.
Yeah, and actually some of the stats in this report are pretty eye-opening. Like,
Mm.
did you know that by 2040, the EU workforce could shrink by, get this, almost 2 million workers every single year?
Wow.
It's like losing the entire population of Vienna annually.
That's crazy.
Or how about this? In 2021, EU companies invested a whopping 270 billion less in research and innovation than their US counterparts.
Yeah, those numbers are definitely, they underscore the need for a new approach, a bold new approach. And I think that's what this report is trying to do. Outline a path forward, a roadmap for how Europe can not only survive, but really thrive in the 21st century.
Okay, so before we get into solutions, right?
Yeah.
Let's sort of set the stage here with Europe's current reality.
Sure.
The report uses this phrase, middle technology trap,
hmm
which honestly sounds a little ominous. What exactly does that even mean?
So basically, it means that Europe risks getting stuck in these mature industries, think like cars, pharmaceuticals,
Right, right.
but missing out on the cutting edge of innovation that's happening, well, everywhere else. It's like we're clinging to our old flip phones while the rest of the world is zooming ahead with the latest smartphones.
Ouch, that's a harsh analogy, but I get it. So we might be ahead in, areas like life expectancy or social welfare,
Mm.
but we're lagging behind in the industries that are actually going to shape the future.
Exactly, yeah. And one of the biggest challenges highlighted in the report is, well, it's this innovation gap, right? Don't get me wrong, Europe is great at inventing things,
Right.
but we often struggle to turn those inventions into commercially successful products and then scale them up globally.
Why do you think that is, though? I mean, what's holding us back?
Well, the report points to a few key culprits, I guess you could say. For one, the single market, right? It's a remarkable achievement,
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
but it's still fragmented in a lot of ways.
Okay.
And this creates all sorts of hurdles for businesses trying to expand across borders.
It's like trying to run a marathon with one shoe on, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have the regulatory environment, which often it can be seen as overly cautious, risk-averse. And this can stifle innovation, especially in these fast-moving fields like, AI or biotech.
So we're playing it safe while others are taking risks and, I guess, reaping the rewards.
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes. And finally, we've got to acknowledge the difficulties that innovative businesses face when they're trying to scale up.
Yeah.
They often struggle to secure funding, navigate the complexities of the European market.
Okay, so we've kind of painted a slightly bleak picture, I guess, of the
Mhm.
challenges, but I'm eager to get to the solutions.
Of course. Yeah.
So let's start with the EU level.
Yeah.
What actions can be taken at the European Union level to address these issues, head on?
All right. So one of the most significant proposals in the report is the creation of a common EU safe asset.
Okay.
Think of it kind of like a super reliable savings account,
Okay.
but it's backed by the entire EU.
Oh, wow.
So this would make borrowing cheaper for governments and businesses,
Right.
which could potentially unlock a flood of investment for those key projects.
So instead of every country kind of going it alone, we'd be pooling our resources and leveraging the collective strength of the EU.
Exactly, yeah. And this could be, this could be a game changer when it comes to financing those massive projects that are crucial for boosting competitiveness. Things like cross-border infrastructure, cutting-edge research initiatives, and even collaborative defense programs.
And it would send a powerful signal to the world that Europe is serious about investing in its future.
Absolutely, yeah. The report also emphasizes the need to reform the EU's research and innovation programs. So instead of spreading resources thinly across many different areas, it suggests focusing on a smaller number of, well, high-impact priorities.
So picking our battles and making sure we're investing where it really counts.
Precisely. It's about focusing on those areas where Europe has the potential to be a global leader. Things like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, sustainable technologies.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm guessing the report also touches on the need to streamline decision-making processes. Because, let's be honest, the EU isn't exactly known for its speed.
You're not wrong, no. The report acknowledges that the EU needs to, ditch the red tape, become much faster at making decisions, especially in areas like tech and security where things are moving, well, at lightning speed.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be stuck in endless committee meetings while the rest of the world is racing ahead.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why the report advocates for a more agile, responsive approach, one that allows for, quicker decision making in these key strategic areas.
All right, so we've got a taste of what can be done at that EU level.
Sure.
But what about individual countries? What actions can be taken at the national level to boost competitiveness?
Well, one area where national governments can make a real difference is in defense procurement.
Okay.
The report recommends that member states should, collaborate more, pool their resources to increase the share of joint purchases.
So instead of each country kind of buying their own military equipment, they'd be working together to get better deals and support, I guess, European defense companies.
Exactly. And this would not only be more cost effective, it would also help European defense companies, achieve greater scale and become more competitive on that global stage.
It's a win-win, right?
Yeah,
Stronger defense capabilities and a boost for European industry.
absolutely. The report also highlights the importance of accelerating the opening of domestic mines for those critical raw materials.
This is about reducing our dependence on other countries for essential resources,
Yeah.
right? Like those rare earth minerals that are needed for everything from smartphones to electric car batteries.
Exactly, yeah. Right now, Europe is heavily reliant on imports for many of these critical materials. And this creates vulnerabilities, especially in a world where geopolitical tensions are, well, on the rise.
So it's like having all our eggs in one basket, and that basket is getting a little wobbly.
Precisely, yeah. And that's why the report calls for streamlining, permitting processes, removing unnecessary obstacles to get those domestic mines up and running faster.
Makes sense. If we're serious about building a more resilient and independent Europe, we need to be able to access those raw materials we need without relying so heavily on others.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, at the national level, the report encourages the use of local content requirements in strategic industries.
Now, hold on. I'm a little
Okay.
confused about these local content requirements.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make things more expensive for businesses
Yeah.
and maybe even stifle innovation?
That's a valid concern, yeah. And it's a delicate balancing act.
Yep.
The idea is to create incentives for companies to invest and produce within Europe,
Uh-huh.
which can help to boost, local economies, create jobs.
Sure.
But it has to be done very carefully to avoid protectionism and, of course, ensure a level playing field.
Okay, so it's about finding that sweet spot where we're supporting European industry without hindering innovation or driving up costs for consumers.
Exactly, yeah. It's a complex issue, and the report acknowledges that. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground, from EU level initiatives to those national policies.
Hmm.
But let's not forget about the role of businesses in all of this.
Right.
What actions can business owners take to contribute to a more competitive Europe?
Well, one of the most interesting proposals in the report is the AI Vertical Priorities Plan.
Okay.
So this is an initiative that's designed to accelerate the adoption of artificial intelligence, but across various European industries.
So it's not about AI in general, but rather focusing on those specific sectors where Europe has, strengths and opportunities.
You got it. Think of it as a targeted approach to AI development. It brings together companies, researchers, policymakers to collaborate on developing, AI solutions for those real-world challenges in specific sectors like automotive, healthcare, energy, agriculture.
That sounds promising. And I'm guessing the report is really encouraging EU companies to kind of jump on board with this plan.
Absolutely, yeah. It offers a range of benefits for participating companies, including access to funding, support for experimentation, and even in some cases some exemptions from competition rules just to foster collaboration.
Wow.
It's a chance for businesses to get ahead of the curve in AI and, gain a competitive advantage.
So it's like a fast track for AI innovation in Europe.
You could say that, yeah. And the
Yeah.
report highlights 10 strategic sectors where this plan could have a major impact.
All right, before we get too deep in the weeds on AI, let's talk about something that's on the minds of many business owners.
Yeah.
The skills gap. Is that something that the report addresses?
Absolutely. The report strongly emphasizes the importance of investing in training and upskilling programs. The job market is changing at a dizzying pace, and we need to make sure our workforce has the skills to keep up.
We're talking about digital skills, AI skills, cybersecurity skills, all those skills that are in such high demand.
Exactly, yeah. Businesses need to be proactive and invest in their employees' development. It's not just about staying competitive, it's about ensuring that people have the opportunities to thrive in, that future economy.
And of course, there's always the option of expanding internationally. What does the report have to say about that?
Well, for businesses that are, looking to venture beyond Europe's borders, the report suggests exploring those joint ventures with foreign companies. And this can be a particularly attractive option for businesses that want to gain access to, well, new markets, new technologies, or expertise.
So instead of trying to go it alone, they can team up with a partner who can, I guess, who can bring something valuable to the table.
Precisely. Joint ventures can be a great way to share risks, costs, pool resources, and just leverage each other's strengths.
All right, so we've covered actions at the EU level, the country level, and even at business level. But what about individuals? Can ordinary citizens do anything to contribute to a more competitive Europe?
Absolutely. The report makes it clear that individual actions matter, and one of the most important things citizens can do is to support policies that promote a strong and independent European tech sector.
So this is about ensuring that Europe has its own thriving tech ecosystem.
Yeah,
It's not just relying on companies from other parts of the world.
you got it. It's about having European companies that are leading the way in innovation, creating jobs, shaping the future of technology, and that requires supportive policies from our governments.
Okay, so we can vote for politicians who prioritize European tech. What else can we do?
Well, the report also encourages individuals to advocate for reforms in education and training systems.
To make them more relevant to the needs of the job market.
Exactly. We need to make sure our education system is equipping people with the skills they need to succeed in this digital age.
Yeah.
And that means, being adaptable, embracing lifelong learning, and focusing on those areas where there's high demand.
So it's not just about getting a degree, it's about continuously developing new skills
Yeah,
and staying relevant in a world that's constantly changing.
precisely. And finally, the report highlights the power of consumer choices.
You mean voting with our wallets?
Exactly. Every time we buy something, we're making a statement about the kind of world we want to live in.
So by choosing to support companies that are investing in, I don't know, green technologies, ethical practices, fair labor standards, we can actually make a difference.
Absolutely. Our consumer choices can influence business behavior and drive change in the market.
This is giving me hope.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the challenges,
Yeah.
but it sounds like there are a lot of concrete actions we can take at every level to build a more competitive and resilient Europe.
I agree. It's a collective effort. Everyone has a role to play.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from EU-wide initiatives to those individual actions.
Mm.
But before we wrap up part one of this deep dive, I'd love to get your take on something. What stood out to you as the most, I don't know, surprising or intriguing proposal in this report?
What really struck me was the emphasis on collaboration. The report really hammers home this point that these challenges they're too big for any one country or company to solve alone.
Right.
We need to work together across borders, across sectors, and across levels of government if we want to succeed.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that Europe is stronger when we act as a united front.
And that brings us to the central question we'll be exploring in part two. Can Europe, with all its diversity and complexity, truly reinvent itself to become a global leader in the 21st century?
I can't wait to dig deeper into that question. But for now, thanks for joining us on part one of this deep dive into European competitiveness. We'll be back soon with part two, where we'll explore the potential for a renewed European partnership and how it could really shape the EU's future.
So we talked about the challenges facing Europe, some potential solutions, but the real question is, can Europe actually pull this off? Can we reinvent ourselves to become a global leader in this new era?
Yeah, it's a big question, right? I mean, we're not exactly known for being like nimble and adaptable. The EU can sometimes feel like this giant ship trying to like make a sharp turn. It takes time and there's a lot of inertia to overcome.
I hear you. And that's where this idea of a renewed European partnership comes in.
Okay.
The report really emphasizes this need for, deeper coordination, a more agile approach to decision making.
So it's not just about tweaking a few policies, it's about changing the way the EU operates, like as a whole.
Exactly, yeah. It's about refocusing our efforts on the most critical issues, streamlining those decision-making processes, and empowering those who want to move faster to actually do so.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do we actually make this happen, though? Does the report offer any, like, concrete steps?
It does, yeah. It suggests a few key areas where we can start.
Yeah.
First, there's this idea of consolidating the EU's numerous coordination mechanisms.
So instead of having a bunch of different committees working in silos, we'd have a more, like, integrated approach.
Right. Imagine bringing together, key players from various policy areas, trade, industry, research, defense, to ensure a more joined up, strategic response to these challenges.
That sounds like a recipe for some pretty intense meetings.
Yeah.
But I get the logic. Breaking down those silos could help us move faster and avoid duplication of effort.
Exactly. And this consolidation of coordination, it should go hand in hand with the consolidation of, well, budgetary resources.
So, meaning we need to focus EU funding on those areas that are truly critical for, competitiveness and security, things that would be, I guess, undersupplied if left to individual member states or the private sector to handle.
Precisely, yeah. Prioritizing those projects with the biggest bang for our buck.
Okay.
Things like cross-border infrastructure, breakthrough research and innovation, and those collaborative defense initiatives we talked about earlier.
So basically being smarter about how we spend our money
Yeah.
and leveraging the collective power of the EU to invest in the future.
You got it. And it's not just about throwing more money at the problem. It's about, spending smarter.
Makes sense. But, sometimes I get the feeling that EU funding can be a bit of like a black box. It's hard to know where the money goes and how it's being used.
That's a fair point. And the report actually acknowledges that the EU needs to do a better job of communicating how these funds are being used and what impact they're having. Transparency and accountability are key.
Okay, so we need to be more strategic about how we coordinate policies, allocate resources. What else can we do to make this renewed partnership a reality?
Well, the report also highlights the importance of streamlining the EU budget and making it easier for beneficiaries to access those funds.
Because right now it can be a bit of a maze navigating all the different programs and requirements. I've heard horror stories from like researchers and entrepreneurs who've spent, months just trying to figure out how to apply for funding.
Right, yeah. And that's time and energy that could be better spent on actually doing the work.
So simplifying the process would make it easier for, businesses, researchers, other organizations to get the support they need to drive innovation and growth.
Exactly, yeah. It's about cutting through the red tape and making the EU a more attractive place to do business and conduct research.
Okay, so we've got more strategic coordination, smarter budgeting, and a streamlined process for accessing funds. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
Well, remember that common EU safe asset we talked about earlier. The report suggests moving towards regular issuance of these safe assets.
Ah, yes, that giant piggy bank for Europe. I can see how that would be a game changer for financing those large-scale investments that are crucial for boosting competitiveness.
Right. And it would also be a major step towards, integrating Europe's capital markets and strengthening the euro's role as a global reserve currency.
So it's not just about funding projects. It's about making Europe a more attractive place to invest, overall.
Exactly. It's about sending a signal to the world that Europe is a stable, reliable, and forward-looking place to put your money.
All right, I have to say, this idea of a renewed European partnership is starting to sound pretty compelling. But let's be realistic. Is it actually achievable? I mean, the EU has, 27 member states, each with its own, interests and priorities. Getting everyone on board with such a fundamental shift seems like a daunting task.
It won't be easy, that's for sure. But I think there's a growing recognition that the old ways of doing things are no longer sufficient.
Okay.
The challenges we face they're too big, too complex and too interconnected for any one country to tackle alone.
So you're saying there's a sense of urgency, a realization that we need to act collectively if we want to succeed.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's what makes this report so important. It's not just a list of recommendations. It's a call to action. It's a call for a new era of European cooperation, one that's based on shared responsibility, mutual trust and a willingness to embrace, well, bold solutions.
It's an inspiring vision, but is it realistic?
Yeah.
Can Europe truly transform itself in such a profound way? That's the question we'll be grappling with in
Yeah.
part 3 of this deep dive. We'll explore the potential obstacles to this renewed partnership and whether the EU has the political will to make it a reality. All right, so we've laid out this vision, right, of a renewed European partnership, more coordination, smarter spending, a streamlined budget. It sounds great on paper, but I can't help but wonder, is it just a pipe dream,
Yeah.
Can Europe actually overcome those historical divisions and embrace such a fundamental shift?
I mean, let's be honest, the EU has a bit of a reputation, right, for
Yeah.
being, well, slow-moving and bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Getting 27 member states, all with their own unique interests and priorities to agree on, well, on anything, can feel like, herding cats.
Exactly. And we've seen this play out time and time again, right? Whether it's trying to agree on a common energy policy or even a coordinated response to a crisis. So how do we overcome this inherent inertia?
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be easy. But I think there's a growing sense of urgency.
Okay.
A recognition that the stakes are higher than ever, the world's changing rapidly, and if Europe wants to remain relevant, competitive, we need to adapt.
Okay, but urgency alone might not be enough, right? What are the biggest hurdles we need to clear if this renewed partnership is going to have any chance of actually succeeding?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be, overcoming that national self-interest. Member states are often reluctant to cede power to Brussels, especially when it comes to those sensitive issues like economic policy or defense.
Yeah, I can see that. It's hard to let go of control, even if it's for the greater good.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of trust. There's been a lot of talk about a north-south divide within the EU,
Right.
with some countries feeling like they're footing the bill for others.
Yeah.
Rebuilding that trust is going to be essential.
Yeah, it's like any partnership, right? Trust is the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that, it's hard to move forward together.
Precisely, yeah. And let's not forget about the political climate. We're seeing, this rise in populism and nationalism across Europe, which often feeds on skepticism towards the EU.
So this vision of a renewed partnership, it's going to face headwinds not just from within the EU institutions, but also from a broader societal shift.
Exactly, yeah. It's a complex landscape, and there are no easy answers. But I think it's important to remember that the EU has overcome, well, seemingly insurmountable challenges before.
You're talking about like the post-war period, right?
Yeah.
When Europe was in ruins and the idea of united Europe seemed like this distant dream.
Exactly, yeah. But through vision, determination, and a willingness to compromise, our predecessors were able to lay the foundation for the EU we know today.
So you're saying that even though the challenges are real, we shouldn't underestimate Europe's capacity for reinvention renewal.
I am, yeah. I think there's a deep well of resilience and ingenuity within Europe. We've faced down crises before, and we've emerged stronger each time.
I like that. It's a reminder that history is on our side.
Mm.
But even if there's this historical precedent for overcoming challenges, there's still a big question mark hanging over all of this.
Yeah.
Does the EU actually have the political will to make this happen?
That's the million-euro question, isn't it?
Sure.
And ultimately, only time will tell. But I think the answer, it hinges on whether European leaders can articulate a compelling vision for the future, a vision that resonates with citizens and inspires them to support this project of renewal.
So it's not enough to just talk about economic competitiveness, strategic autonomy. We need to connect with people on an emotional level.
Yeah, exactly. We need to remind people what's at stake: peace, prosperity, and a future where Europe can continue to play a leading role on that global stage.
It's a powerful message, but it's also a challenging one to communicate in a world that's increasingly fragmented and polarized.
I agree. Yeah, it's going to require strong leadership, clear communication, and a willingness to engage in open and honest dialogue with citizens.
And maybe even a little bit of that European magic that has helped us overcome so many obstacles in the past.
Yeah, that couldn't hurt. Look, I'm not naive enough to think that this renewed partnership is going to be a walk in the park.
Mm.
There will be setbacks, disagreements, moments of doubt.
But you're saying that even with all the complexities, potential pitfalls,
Mm.
this vision is worth striving for.
Absolutely, yeah. Because the alternative, a fragmented and inward-looking Europe is simply not acceptable. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to build a Europe that is strong, united, and ready to face the challenges of the 21st century.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of European competitiveness. We've covered a lot of ground, from the challenges to the potential solutions and the tough questions that lie ahead. But ultimately, the message I'm taking away from this is one of hope. Hope that Europe can rise to the occasion and chart a new course for a brighter future.
I couldn't agree more. And I hope our listeners, inspired by this conversation, will feel empowered to engage in this important debate and contribute to shaping the future of Europe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the future of Europe is not something that happens to us. It's something we create together. Thanks for listening.